Okay, so for our next question, we want to use the table to find the exponential equation and label the function as growth or decay. Well, let's first of all think about what an exponential function looks like. We have some initial value known as the a times the base, which is what we multiply by each time we go up. So let's see here. The initial value is when x is 0, it's what our y value is. So far we have f of x equals 4 times b to the x power. Now from here we want to figure out what are we going up by each time? What are we multiplying by each time? How do I get from 4 over 25 to 4 over 5? How do I get from 4 over 5 to 4? 4 to 20, 20 to 100. Some of you guys can see clearly that, oh, we just multiply by 5 to get from 20 to 100. But some of you might be still a little confused. What we're doing here is we're seeing how to get from 20 to 100. We know that 20 times the b value is equal to 100. If I divide both sides by 20, I can see here that each time we're going up by 5. We're multiplying by 5. We're getting bigger. As the x value increases, the y value increases, which means this is a growth function. As x gets bigger, y gets bigger. This represents growth, folks. Okay, so for our next function, we want to find, it's an exponential function that we're trying to find. And we're going to label it as growth or decay. And the thing that's difficult about this one is we're jumping from -2 to +2. I can't see incrementally what we're going up by each time. We're jumping, making this jump all the way from -2 to +2. What I'd like to see is what's going on in between. I want to know what happens at -1, 0, 1, and 2. Because then I can identify what we're multiplying by each time we go up. So I do know that I multiply by some base value to go from 12 to this value here. And then I multiply by some base value to go from this value to whatever this is. And multiply by some base value to get to this value. Then multiply by the base value to get to this value here. Now these are not zeros, but we're multiplying by the base to get from 12 all the way to 4 over 3. So to get from 12 to 4 over 3, I would need to multiply the base a total of 4 times to get to the 3/4. So I have to solve for b. And I am going to divide both sides by 12. And so that's going to give me, I have 12 crossing with 12. That b to the 4th is equal to a 3 over a 12. Those are both divisible by 3. And 3 divided by 3 is 1. 12 divided by 3 is 4. And 4 times 4 is 16. So what times itself 4 times is 16, everyone? That's 2. 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 is 16. What times itself 4 times is 1? That is 1. So we can see here that we're multiplying by 1/2 each time we go up. Each time the x value increases by 1, we're multiplying by a b value of 1/2. So if I take 12, multiply it by 1/2 or divide by 2, that gives me a 6 here. And then 6 divided by 2, that gives me a 3 here. And 3 divided by 2 is 3 over 2. And then 3 over 2 divided by 2 one more time, or multiply by 1/2 is a 3 over 4. This gives me everything I need. I have my b value, which is 1/2. I have my initial value, which is 3. So I can write my exponential function. It is 3 times 1/2 to the x power. Now, because when we are going up with x, we are actually going down with y, This is a decay function. As we increase for x, we decrease for y. This is known as a decay function. Let's move on to our next question. All right, so for our next question, we want to graph the function 4 times 2 to the x power. And what we need to do is plug in x to find out what the y value is. I'm going to start off with 2. Plug in 2. That gives us a 4 times 2 to the second power, which gives us 4 times 4, which is a 16. Guess what, everyone? Our base is 2. We're multiplying by 2 or dividing by 2. We're going to be dividing by 2 as we go down or up. But let's plug in and see what happens. I plug in 2, or a 1, excuse me. 4 times 2 is 8. So as I'm decreasing in x, I'm dividing by 2. If I were increasing in x, I would be multiplying by 2. When x is 0, y is equal to a 4. If I plug that in, we got 2 to the 0 is equal to a 1. We're left with a 4. What happens when we plug in -1? Oops. We cross the line and change the sign. That gives us a 4 over 2, which is 2. And then our next one here, we have 4 times 2 to the -2, which is a 4 over 4, which is a 1. Let's plug in these values, or let's graph. And I'm going to go out 1, 2, and -1, and -2. And we're going to go up by 1 here. 1, so that's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16 is one up. All right, so I got enough spots to graph. When x is -2, y is +1. That's this point here. When x is -1, y is 2. Point here. When x is 1, y is 8. Oh, sorry. Skipped over x is 0, y is 4. When x is 1, y is 8. And x is 2, y is 16, goes right here. Connect our dots. And we have this great looking exponential function graph. All right, one more question. Let's look at the piecewise function. So we have a couple pieces to think about. We have to graph y equals -5 for x values less than -1. And we have to graph -x plus 5 for x values in between -1 and +8. Let's go ahead and make a t-chart with x and y. With x and y. All right, so our first one, we want to graph -5, y equals -5 for x values that are less than -1. What's less than -1? That would be -2, that would be -3, -4, and so on. And what do we have to plug in here? We don't have anything to plug in. Y is always going to be a -5. So let's look at what's going on. When x is -2, darn it, y is -5. point here. When x is -3, y is -5, -5. So we have this line, horizontal line, right at -5. We go all the way up to -1 and not including -1 at that point there. Let's look at the second part of our graph. We're done with this first part. We can forget about this first part. We've dealt with this first piece. Let's move on to the next piece. And I'm graphing the y equals -x plus 5 for x values in between -1 and 8. So I'm plugging in -1 all the way, -1 all the way to 8. Now, I don't want to plug in all these values. I'm just going to jump to 8 here. This is a line, so all we really need are 2 points anyway. If I plug in -1 minus gives me a plus, and I'll have a 1 plus 5, which is 6. And then when x is 0 here, y is 5. When x is 1, y is 4. When x is 4, y is 1. When x is 8, y is a -3. Let's plot these points here. When x is -1, y is 6. When x is 0, y is 5. When x is 1, y is 4. And then 4, 1. And then -8. -8, -3. Well, you know what? At this point here, we don't include that. I'm going to have an open circle there to show that we're not including that point. And that's it. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Happy studying.